The Ontario government is trying to incentivize nurses to stay on the job. Health Minister Christine Elliott announcing today the government is giving eligible frontline nurses up to $5,000 as it tries to stabilize the workforce during this third pandemic year. Eligible full-time nurses will receive a lump sum payment, while eligible part-time and casual nurses will see two installments. The price tag of this program, $763 million, and the money will be given to eligible nurses through their employer. For more on this, we welcome back to CP24 Tonight Doris Greenspun, CEO of the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, and Sarah Fung, co-host of the Gritty Nurse podcast. Thanks to both of you. Sarah, let's start with getting your reaction to this. Is $5,000 enough to keep nurses like you on the job?
You know, I find that it's very interesting the timing that this lump sum came into effect, which is going to be right before the election. And I kind of wonder where the government was last year, even the year before. And really, when you think about it, the wording is up to $5,000, which means that this is most likely going to be taxed. And when you think about the fact that a full-time nurse works about 2,000 hours a year, it really just works out to a couple extra dollars an hour. Is that enough to keep nurses at the front line? I'm not sure. I also wonder if there's any incentive to bring nurses back who have left the bedside or left the profession altogether. So I think this is a step in the right direction. It's certainly very temporary. And I really think that the government needs to look at repealing Bill 124, which is going to be a much more fulsome and comprehensive solution.
So I want to pick up on this point of this being a one-time temporary payment. Doris, the SEIU today calling this a knee-jerk incentive. Do you think this one-time payment will really address the long-term problem, which we know is recruiting and retaining Ontario nurses?
Thank you so very much. I will build on Sarah's comment. Hi, Sarah. The reality is, do we welcome any money? Yes, of course we welcome. It's an acknowledgement to the exhaustion and the selfless giving of nurses for already 25 months. Is it enough to retain nurses? No, and that's why Bill 124 needs to go. And we need negotiations with all the unions. That will help retain nurses. What will help retain nurses, Chanel, is both the compensation and the workloads. The workloads are brutal. They need to absolutely improve, and retaining nurses is essential to opening the door to the many, many that want to come to the profession. To actually do just the bonus alone will not work, and the government is well aware. We are in conversations about many other initiatives. We just need to move forward with them fast and furiously, and we want to see them in each single political party platform.
So, Doris, you mentioned a few things, workload and burnout. Sarah, can you talk more about that? Why are people leaving?
I think at the end of the day, nurses want safe workloads and they want to be able to take proper care of their patients. With the way things are happening right now, being short-staffed, the patients getting sicker, they aren't able to provide the care that we have been trained to provide. And that is really the moral and ethical dilemma. So the payment does help, as Doris said, but really at the end of the day, we want safer and more sustainable work conditions. Nurses are subject to verbal and physical abuse on the job, which the public may not be aware of, and we need something to address this issue as well.
So, Doris, we know you've been pushing for Bill 124 to be repealed for months now, notably no mention of that in today's announcement with Minister Elliott. But if that were to be repealed, how much more could a nurse really make?
Well, I think that the compensation for RNs needs to be significantly increased. Also for RPNs. RPNs are now making almost the same as PSWs. Going back to Sarah's comments, this is a step in the right direction. Let me tell you in real terms, this is about $2 to $3 an hour versus PSWs got significantly more. And let me be clear, we welcome that PSWs got more. It's just that we cannot compress RPNs in the middle with almost the same compensation. And RNs, for RNs, we are competing with the US. There is no Bill 124 in the US. Nurses get significantly RNs, higher pay. And we have here, let's remember this one too, over 20,000 nurses waiting to work, ready to come to the workforce. And for that, again, you need the mentors, which is the retention of nurses in the workplace to mentor the new ones that are our internationally educated nurses, as well as we need to bring back, again, the point that Sarah made, bring back those nurses that just retired 2-3 years ago. They can serve as full-time mentors, and they have the expertise and the commitment to do so. So solutions are there, yes. Chanel, let's be very clear. Every single nurse will tell you, we are not giving up. The solutions are there. Government needs to continue to move forward faster than ever before, because as Minister Elliott said, the system, the health system depends on nurses. It's the great majority of healthcare professionals. And so do the people of Ontario and our colleagues that, yet again, I will tell you, they are exhausted.
And when we think about how exhausting this environment is, I mean, do retired nurses really want to come back, Sarah?
That's a great question. I think that there was something called there was a late career nurse initiative, which to my understanding is coming back, but was something that was scrapped earlier. I think that was something that really helped end of career nurses to, work at something that wasn't so physically strenuous. And do they want to come back? I think I'm not sure, because it's really not an environment you want to go back to when you hear that things haven't gotten better. And if anything, they've gotten worse. This is a really dark time for nursing. And I really commend every nurse that has stayed in thus far, because it definitely has been a challenging journey this past 2 years.
Doris, when we think about solutions, how do you see us rebuilding out of this pandemic?
Chanel, this is not the first time that nursing is in this situation. The solutions are there. We have provided every single party and the government with those solutions. Going back to the issue of the senior nurse strategy, it needs to come back. It's going to come back. In addition, we need to bring retired nurses, and yes, many want to come back. One of our expert groups is the Retired Nurses Interest Group. They're quite willing to come back as mentors. They cannot continue to work shifting at nights, et cetera, in the front lines of care at the pace that things are going. But do they want to come back, many of them as mentors, paid mentors? Absolutely, they will. So let the government put the funding, and let's continue to rebuild this profession, because without that, there is no health system. And there is the catastrophic surgical wait times. Just picture that alone, Chanel. Just picture that alone. It is a disaster that people have been waiting 2 years or more for their procedures and surgeries. Yes, there was a COVID pandemic. Now it's time to actually bring back people for those procedures and surgeries. And for that, you need the nurses, and the solutions are there. It is about funding. It is about repealing the bill. It is about negotiations. And it is about all these components together. And we can have a vibrant nursing workforce again, because that's what my colleagues want, and that's what patients need.
Sarah, I want to go back to something you said right off the top, the timing, right? This is an election year. What does Doug Ford, what does his government have to do at this point to make Ontario nurses happy?
I think that it's very interesting when we talk about money, and there's never enough money for healthcare. I think that if you prioritize healthcare and make it your number one priority, you will find the money, you will find the resources. Does the government want to make healthcare the number one priority? That is a question yet to be answered. I think with an election coming up, everybody should do their research on all the different parties, see what their platform is, and see where you see the future of healthcare. Do we want to continue the way it's been going, or do we want to see something different? I would encourage everybody to write to their MP and tell them to repeal Bill 124 and see what their response is, and use that to help you guide your decision as to who you're going to vote for.
Thank you so much for your time, Sarah Fung and Doris Greenspun. We really appreciate this discussion tonight. Thanks again. On this International Women's Day, a group of Canadian Afghan women are launching a bold campaign called Do Not Touch My Clothes. It features 10 women in modern Afghan clothing, and it's meant to draw attention to the plight of women in Afghanistan still living under Taliban rule. Joining us now to discuss this campaign is community activist Nilo Mansouri and makeup artist Sabrina Wassel. Thanks to both of you, and happy International Women's Day. Thanks so much for joining us.
Happy International Women's Day. Thank you so much for having us, and as always to CP24 for extending their platform to our community.
Well, we appreciate you coming on to share this story. Nilo, let's start with talking about the inspiration behind this campaign, the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. What is it like being a woman living under Taliban rule today?
Well, thank you for the question. Right now, what we're seeing in Afghanistan is a continuation of the struggles that have been imposed on women for the past 40 years. This past August, the Taliban regime took over, and women continue to struggle, and they're fighting, to get equal rights to that of men in the country. So what's at stake here essentially is a freedom of expression, and in every way possible, the Taliban regime is trying to limit those freedoms and basically remove women outside of the public sphere.
Sabrina, part of this campaign includes the phrase, "There is freedom in our clothing." This really spoke to me. It's so powerful. Say more about what this means.
Basically, first of all, thank you so much for having us today. This means the world to us. We really don't get to see Afghan women to be on a platform like this. You always see an Afghan woman in a burqa that is usually imposed on them out of their freedom, right? So to have freedom in our clothing it means so much, because our clothing, it symbolizes so much of our culture, from our ancestors, from everything that we stand for. So it's not just a piece of clothing, it really is so much more than that.
And you mentioned freedom of choice when it comes to clothing. Explain what's happening under Taliban rule.
Well, basically right now, they have no freedom of choice. And by the Taliban stripping away the clothing, it's also stripping away their freedom and in a way taking away our culture. So that's why this campaign that we started is to shed some light on that, because it's a great opportunity to bring the Afghan women in their fight and their constant battle just to be free in terms of freedom of speech, freedom of what they wear. To others, it may seem like it's just clothing, but like I said, it's so much more than that. It's so much deeper.
So, Neil, this campaign, I have to say it's stunning. It draws on a 1960s feature of Afghanistan in Vogue. Talk to us a bit about the creative process here. How did these pictures come to life?
Well, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention our incredible team, who this project would not have been possible without. Our amazing designer, Salma from Nas Designs, who put her heart and soul into every piece and took into consideration the different elements and cultural traditions of importance that go into each one of these outfits. So for those who may not know, Afghanistan is a country of many regions, several provinces, and each of them are very unique in each of their different ways. So Sabrina and I had actually thought of this project long before COVID, but we had to pause it because of the pandemic. When the humanitarian crisis happened, we thought that we would sort of readjust the campaign to advocate for women in Afghanistan. So our creative process originally was tied to advocating for Afghan women in that we don't want our story to be a story of women who are constantly seen as oppressed. There's so much more to our stories, and those stories are told through things that may seem as small as clothing, but actually have an incredible impact on our culture and our tradition and ultimately our identity.
Sabrina, there are the dresses, the jewelry, and of course the makeup, and that's your role here. Tell us a bit about your creative process.
Oh, where do I even begin? Because we have, like Neil said, we have so many beautiful regions, and there's not a specific makeup look you can't really pinpoint a specific region to a makeup look. So my whole idea, the vision that I really had that I wanted to bring to the table was just really to focus on bringing and enhancing that natural beauty that everyone really has, and to showcase that. So obviously we had a lot of fun. There's so many colors, so many designs in these outfits that are stunning, but the whole focus is really more on to make it more Vogue-like, to make it more magazine-worthy. So it's, the response is, as positive as we can get, but it's really the natural beauty that I wanted to lead the team to enhance their natural beauty.
Nilu, you mentioned the stories. Tell us about the models, who they are, what stories they're wanting to share through these photos.
Well, our models are an incredible group of women from the GTA, as well as our creative team. So one really interesting aspect of this was bringing allies on board who were also wanting to advocate for the women of Afghanistan during this time. Our models actually represent each of the regions they're from, and we regret that we can't, because of the pandemic, we were limited to the amount of people we could bring into the studio at the time, so we couldn't really showcase every single region of the country, and it's actually virtually impossible to do so because of the numerous tribes and villages across the country. So our designer actually implemented different parts and different elements of regions and provinces in the clothing, and our incredible models, each one of them are, again, from Toronto and across the GTA, and they came and they supported along with their teams of hair and makeup artists. And one thing I really want to note is that the fight so far for Afghan women have really been limited to things like, protests, civil protests, but this is a form of protest through art. And I think it's something that may be unconventional, but still draws attention to the issues that are happening back home.
And I want to ask about, the world watching right now, another humanitarian crisis unfold, this one in Ukraine, of course. Sabrina, Canada welcoming an unlimited number of Ukrainians on a temporary basis, but this new immigration policy does not apply to Afghans or other refugees. How do you feel about this?
I mean, it's hard to answer that because right now my heart is with Ukraine. I think that the Afghan people really can connect and understand and be empathetic to the struggle of what they're going through right now. So it's something that's super unfortunate, and our heart goes out to everybody in Ukraine. And as a Canadian, as an Afghan who's living here, obviously we have, I'm welcoming everybody with open arms, but I do wish that the same was for Afghan women and families.
We so appreciate you both coming on and sharing this campaign with us. Happy International Women's Day to both of you.
As of March 21st, schools and child care providers will no longer be required to conduct on-site verification of screening for all children, students, and staff. Children, students, and staff still self-screen before attending school or childcare every day and stay at home if they are experiencing any new or worsening symptoms of illness. The province is also aligning with changes to community measures, including eliminating cohorting and distancing requirements. And in alignment with community masking requirements, masks will no longer be required of children, students, and staff, or visitors in childcare, schools, school board offices, and/or student transportation.
Well, in just a few days, less than 2 weeks, actually, staff and students, let me clarify, in just a few days, staff and students will enter March break. The March break period is what I meant to say. So that's coming up starting this weekend. And once they all return to the classroom, this part is in less than 2 weeks. On Monday, March the 21st, the masks can come off. The province's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Kieran Moore, says mask wearing will be a choice after March the 21st, and he asks that those who choose to continue to wear their masks be treated with respect. The Ontario government will continue to provide PPE to schools, including masks and rapid antigen tests, and that will continue going to schools until well after March the 21st. Well, ETFO, the union representing public elementary teachers, early childhood educators, and others, calls this announcement premature. And a coalition of hospitals, including Sick Kids and McMaster Children's Hospital, say they hope the government would have delayed pulling this mandate, saying in a statement today, and I quote, "We would have preferred to see masks kept in place for 2 weeks after March break, so we could have assessed the impact of the broader reopening of Ontario." Well, how about the students? What do they think? Here with us tonight, Sophia Alexanian, to your right, grade 11 student and founding member of Ontario Students for COVID Safety, and in the middle there, we have a grade 11 student, Caden. Caden, I didn't put your name there. Caden Johnson. Thank you so much. Both of you, there we go, grade 11. Caden Johnson, you're in the Peel District School Board. Both in grade 11, both at the Peel District School Board within the board, correct?
No, I'm actually a TDSB student.
I'm so sorry. TDSB for Sophia. Okay. So both high school students, both in grade 11. Let me clarify that there. And both have strong feelings on this. So, Sophia, let me start with you because you're with Ontario Students for COVID Safety. Your group, and I know this is supported by Caden, but your group is staging a walkout on March the 21st. Let's start with why. What is your main concern?
Well, currently we don't know, what the lifting of other COVID safety precautions, what effect that's going to have on case counts. And as students, we've been on the front lines in schools. Schools are the most essential service. And we've seen that spikes in cases, it's not just an abstract number for us. Even though they chose to stop collecting COVID-19 data in schools, we still saw the effects. We still saw staffing shortages. I personally was impacted by staffing shortages when my teacher's child got sick at their school. And then my teacher had to stay home to care for his child. That was 1 week. And then the teacher himself got sick. That was another week. So that was 2 weeks without a consistent teacher in class, without consistent lesson plans. And even then, there was no supply teachers. So our classroom teacher role was being filled by on-call teachers who were on prep, who could only stay for half the period. So it was very inconsistent. It was very sporadic. It didn't feel like it was a learning disruption. Yes, in theory, schools were open, but there were so many staffing shortages and so many issues with students getting sick and worrying about their teachers and their classmates getting sick that it was a real learning disruption. So that's part of why we're staging that walkout.
So, Sophia, but how do you feel about the option that there is a choice? I mean, if someone wants to wear it, they can. And I also should point out that we just had a panel of doctors. We do anticipate that some school boards or some regions will say, look, we're going to say that if you're in, let's say, Peel District or you're in the Peel region, for example, you're going to have to continue to wear masks for a while. So the regional medical officers of health or the school boards can continue to move forward with this.
Yeah, and I am happy that school boards are taking a stand and prioritizing student and staff safety. And I would be very grateful if my school board did choose to do that. But the issue of personal choice, see, we have this language going on right now that it's a matter of personal risk assessment. But that's not really in line with the values that we have in education. In education, we have values of inclusion, of equity. We can't just have the people who are immunocompromised, who live in multi-generational households, who are too young to get vaccinated. That is a major concern for our group. We're concerned for younger siblings and cousins, and just leave them behind and say that their needs don't matter in the education system, that we're just going to push ahead with what this supposed majority wants. In education, we have this value of compassion, and we speak so much about equity. We speak so much about inclusion. Why can't we choose to continue that as we're moving to with how we're managing COVID now?
Very well stated, Sophia. I can see why you're a leader amongst your peers, clearly. Very well stated in terms of how you feel and how some of your peers feel. Let's get to you, Caden. Caden, I am familiar with how you've been feeling for some time. I've been following you on social media. You've been on our show before. So you feel very much like Sophia. Is that safe to say?
Yes, I do believe that the removal of the mask mandate across the province is very ill-timed, and it will likely cause an increase in cases, which will mean it will have more people being admitted to the hospitals. We will have more of our community events be shut down, and we're going to have more restrictions potentially reimposed due to an increased threat and due to returning to the stage that we've been so hard, that we've been trying to get out of for these past couple months. Yeah,
so Caden and Sophia, we know this is a divisive issue. People have very strong feelings about this. Whether learning this news today brought feelings of excitement, I could take my mask off, I don't have to wear it indoors, or feelings of anxiety. Caden, what do you hear from your peers? We have heard from many educators and parents saying, oh, finally, it's so cumbersome for my kids to have to wear the mask. But others saying, oh, no, I don't feel safe sending my child to school without a mask on. What are you hearing from some of your peers, Caden?
I've heard from the majority of my peers that they do feel the same way about the removal of this mandate being a bit ill-timed. But the people that I have heard who are in favor of it, their reasoning tends to be the fact that it's just been an inconvenience for them, and they're happy to be able to take it off and more freely communicate with their friends in classrooms, as there is also going to be no more cohorting. But the problem with that is it is putting convenience above the needs and the public health. The problem with that is more people will be admitted into hospitals, and when cases go up in schools as well, that is also going to cause learning disruptions. As Sophia stated earlier, with the staffing shortages, we're going to have more learning disruptions when we have to have supply teachers come in, or when we have to have teachers throughout the building rotate to cover the classes. I feel like we need to protect the people that we live with, and we need to protect our fellow students. So by keeping the mask mandate, that is a really essential tool that has been helping us do just that for these last 2 years.
And Kaden, last time you joined us on CP24 Tonight, you were at home continuing with online learning as opposed to learning in the classroom inside a school. Is that the case for you now?
Yes, I have remained at home for this school year, and I will have to see what will happen down the road to determine whether I will be returning for my next school year. I'm
wondering for both of you, I mean, you're grade 11, you'll be, under the law, adults very soon. Are your parents supportive of, this is your choice? Once the mandate lifts, you want to wear a mask. When you go to school, go indoors somewhere, then put it on. Sophia, what do your parents say?
Well, my parents, they do trust my judgment, and we do have conversations about respecting our communities and respecting ourselves and our health and people's boundaries. So they do trust my judgment, and luckily I think my judgment is pretty good in judging when I see a packed hallway. Like I wish I could take a picture, but the whole thing, minors in school, people's faces showing, but like kids just like sardines just going through the hallway, rushing to class. Like, is that really, in that crowded scenario, a good idea to not wear a mask? For me, making that personal call as I weigh the options with my parents, it's definitely to keep a mask on for now.
And we've heard from educators, they've sent to us images about how difficult it is to maintain distance in some classrooms where the classroom is not a large space. Distancing desks is almost impossible because of the geography of the classroom. And now we know that right after the March break, you can take those masks off. So Sophia, maybe I'll put this to you. I mean, have you heard from, people that are some of your peers? I know your feelings and Caden's feelings, but you're in the school system. Has there been a lot of compliance, or is it, is it something that some of your peers are fumbling with and they can't wait to get it off? I mean, I imagine there's some people who feel that way too.
Well, here's the thing. I'm very, very grateful, and I'm very, very lucky that my school, we have a good culture. We have a good culture of mask compliance. We have a good culture of kids in general care for each other, because we're a school where we have a lot of families that are multi-generational families, so kids are doing it for the concerns of each other's grandparents. So we're very lucky that for now we do have that. And as I was canvassing for our walkout today and talking to kids about their feelings, it seemed like the general attitude was, this feels too soon. I will still be wearing my mask. And of course, I spoke to a few kids who are like, well, I play music, isn't it kind of exciting to, have that extracurricular and now not even worry about wearing a mask in between. But there's that excitement, but there's also the caution of, well, at what price? What will happen? I want to have my family healthy to come see me at a concert in the future,
Despite how either of you feel, certainly leaders amongst your peers. Thank you both for your time tonight, Sophia and Kaden.
Thank you.
You took away a lot of resources from other places, from other real victims of real crimes. You used up the police resources for your own benefit.
Okay, happening now, actor Jussie Smollett is in a Chicago courtroom and will learn his fate at any moment. The judge has a wide range of sentencing options, including prison, probation, fines, and restitution to help authorities recoup the money spent on the investigation. We're going to listen in and then have some reaction with criminal defense lawyer Ari Goldkai. You're listening right now to Justice James Lynn.
Second place, the heater has to be addressed, and you created a heater, and boy, did they put on an investigation. And I know that I've been listening to Chicago police officers and listening about police investigations for many years. And it's certainly not a perfect police department. It's perhaps unfairly maligned in some respects as well. I'll match the homicide detectives here against any in the country for their competence and thoroughness. not a question about that. But what they did in this case is extraordinary. I've never seen, even in some murder cases, the amount of police work that went into this investigation. You did exactly what you didn't want to happen. They put so many police resources into this. When I say what you didn't want to happen is you never wanted this case solved. You thought that somehow you'd be able to skate by and nobody would ever know what really happened here, and you're going to walk away from this, and it didn't go down like that at all, of course. So they solved the case. And what happened? Turns out that you're not a victim of a hate crime. You're not a victim of a racial hate crime. You're not a victim of a homophobic hate crime. You're just a charlatan pretending to be a victim of a hate crime. And that's shameful, especially from the family you got brought up with your family values. It's so sad. The damage you've done to yourself is way beyond anything else that can happen to you from me or any other judge that would be sentencing you in this criminal case. You are now a permanently convicted felon. Your family who loves you and supports you, I don't even want to use the word forgive because forgiveness isn't even necessary. They're with you so much, they're so tight-knit, but you have to live with the fact that you really put them through a ringer. You've embarrassed your valuable friends in high places, the elected public officials, people in the media. You've embarrassed them. You have to live with that. I don't know if those relationships can be repaired. You've become toxic in your own workplace. Your career future is uncertain at very best. It was really on a rocket ship to success, and now you've turned yourself into riches to rags, and it's so unfortunate. Your very name has become an adverb for lying, and I cannot imagine what could be worse than that. People talk about situations where somebody's lying and trying to manipulate and maneuver a story, and your name comes up as, oh, pulling a Jussie, something like that. That's awful. You're the butt of jokes. Comedians, mainstream talk show hosts, they make jokes about you. They do sketches about you. I can't imagine anything worse than that. Now, this is all self-inflicted. These are things you did to yourself. This is self-damage. Well, some people may think that what you did is funny and that there's some room for humor or jokes about it. But I assure you this court does not. I don't think there is anything funny at all about hoaxing and faking racial hate crimes, hoaxing or faking homophobic hate crimes. I think that is disgraceful. There is nothing funny about it. There's no humor in what you did whatsoever, all because you're selfish, arrogant, narcissistic. At least you have that side in you that came out through this case, and you kept doubling down and doubling down and doubling down. It's not funny. It's not funny at all. And I'm your sentencing judge, and I don't find it funny. So where are we at? We're at the end. You're convicted of a Class 4 felony. It's presumptively probationable, but we have some real serious aggravating factors here. Your premeditation, which I've described. The pain you've caused to real victims of hate crimes, which I have described. The damage you've done to the city of Chicago, I've heard. It's been talked about. I'm mindful of the city's request for restitution, and if I'm going to fashion that, consider that request, I have to fashion the sentence accordingly. And above all, the capper of all cappers, your performance on the witness stand. This could only be described as pure perjury. You got on the witness stand, you didn't have to, you did, you certainly have a right to, but you committed hour upon hour upon hour of pure perjury. And I find all those to be ample factors. If this court were to decide that the things you did, that any kind of probationary sentence would deprecate the seriousness of the offense and you need to go to the penitentiary, the record is clear and it would support it. But I'm looking at everything in its totality. And I agree. It's told to me today, you can't judge everybody by one bad thing they've done in their life. I don't know if it's the only bad thing, but it's the only bad thing that I'm concerned about now. And that you do have quite a record of real community service and quite a record of attaching with people. There is a lot of mitigation in this case as well. And I'm mindful of the pleas of mercy, particularly from people that are in the arena of dealing with social justice issues, that are fighting seriously fighting, not playing around, not doing games like you were doing, but seriously fighting for matters involving hate crimes of all sorts. And they're asking you for mercy as well. So I'm trying to consider who you are as a person, how you got here, how somehow you strayed away from your family values, you let that dark, narcissistic, selfish, and arrogant side come out, and you persisted with it for years on this case. I'm fashioning the following sentence, and here's your sentence. I'm sentencing you to 30 months felony probation, and the probation is going to be to this court. You're going to be allowed to travel wherever you want. You do not have to live in the state of Illinois. You can report by phone. I know that if you're going to try to make a living and do some of the things you do, you may have to go to other places, New York and Los Angeles. You can do those things. You will pay restitution to the city of Chicago in the amount of $120,106. You are fined $25,000, which is the maximum fine. And you will spend the first 150 days of your sentence in the Cook County Jail. And that will start today, right here, right now. Mr. Smollett, though the jury found you guilty and I've sentenced you as I have, you have the right to appeal the findings and rulings of the court or ask your sentence to be modified. To do those things, you need to file a notice of appeal in writing within 30 days. You may also file a motion to modify your sentence, which would have to be filed in writing within 30 days. Anything not stated in those filings are waived for purposes of appeal. If you cannot afford lawyers or transcripts, they would be provided free of charge. Do you have any questions?
No, I would just like to say to Your Honor that I am not suicidal. That's what I was about to say.
Okay.
I am not suicidal.
Okay.
I am not suicidal. I am innocent, and I am not suicidal. If I did this, then it means that I stuck my fist in the fears of Black Americans in this country for over 400 years and the fears of the LGBTQ community. Your Honor, I respect you and I respect the jury, but I did not do this. And I am not suicidal. And if anything happens to me when I go in there, I did not do it to myself. And you must all know that. I respect you, Your Honor. I respect your decision. Jail time. I am not suicidal.
Okay. Mr. Uche, let me inquire, are there any post-sentencing motions you care to present right now?
Yes, Judge.
Yes, Ms. Widow.
The defense would wish to present a motion to reconsider sentence.
All right.
And file it in stanter.
Right. It is timely filed.
Thank you, Judge.
And let me say, I've obviously considered the sentence at great length, and it's timely filed, so it's preserved for purposes of appeal. Motion to reconsider sentence is respectfully denied. And is there another? One second, Randy. Anything else? Just a second. Is there going to be a notice of appeal filed?
Yes, Judge. We're filing a notice of appeal. We're going to be emailing to the court right now, to the office.
You're doing it in stanter, and are you
okay, wow. Here with Ari Goldkind, Jussie Smollett has been sentenced. He will have to spend 30 months on probation, the first 150 in jail. He has to pay a fine of $25,000 plus more than $100,000 in restitution to the city of Chicago. Ari, Smollett stood up and spoke when the judge asked if there were any questions, and he pretty much once again, even though he's convicted, announced that he is innocent and not suicidal. He said, if anything happens in jail, I did not do it. I want to take our viewers back a moment. His family had, throughout sentencing today, pleaded with the judge to not send him to jail because they were concerned for his safety. There is a lot to take in here. What do you make of all this?
Christina, I've covered a lot of cases, and I'm going to steal a word that was just said a moment ago, which is wow. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've seen something like that in 20 years of doing this, and I've seen a lot. That was performative. I'm not so sure at this point he isn't totally disregarding his lawyer's advice. That was just an unbelievable moment that I think will be remembered for a long time. He is lumping himself into the Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein kind of idea that he will be murdered in prison. There is no evidence of that. And in 150 days or less, he will be safely released. This is right after the judge called him, and I'll quote here, a perjurer, somebody who doubles down on lies, somebody who's a charlatan, somebody who's narcissistic, somebody who's selfish. And this is somebody who today trotted out the fact that not only is he half black, but he's half Jewish. And he was told and admonished by the judge that that essentially would mean that he was raised right to know. And the judge went on, we didn't see all of this. The judge went on for a good 10 to 15 minutes about nobody would understand the importance of social justice more than somebody who comes from his family and the damage what he did would do. And the other part, and I'm not sure we saw all of it because this has been covered live for at least a few hours, is that he literally took the stand. And again, the word is doubled down on his perjury and expressed no remorse. And whether that's a smart thing or not is something that lawyers often discuss with their clients. I'll explain how the sausage is made. That if you ever want to avoid something or make yourself look better on appeal or more governable, boy, did this judge go at Jussie Smollett very fairly in non-legalese. People can go back and watch the feed if they want. It was plain spoken. It was well done. But boy, oh boy, was that moment at the end something that if Mr. Smollett has ever shot himself in the foot prior to today, I think that is probably the coup de grace.
I will agree. That was quite an incredible moment when the Justice Lynn said any questions, and he stood up to proclaim his innocence, if I heard correctly. It was challenging for me to hear where he was in the courtroom, and went on to say he is not suicidal. Again, if something happens to him, he didn't do it. That was not an opportunity for proclamations. It was an opportunity for questions. And Ari, you know, a local reporter in the courtroom described it as the sentencing was underway that Justice Lynn, she said, was ripping into Smollett. A review here, he said that you're just a charlatan pretending to be the victim of a hate crime, and that's shameful. You are now a permanently convicted felon. You embarrassed your friends in high places, publicly elected officials. You embarrassed the media. You became toxic to your workplace. Your very name has become an adverb for lying, and still this man maintains his innocence. In saying all this, do you think the 30 months probation, along with some of the restitution, the fine, and the first 150 days in jail, was that satisfactory to you?
So let's just cover 2 points there. The first is, while we saw towards the tail end of the live feed the judge rip into him, the judge was also very deferential to him and his family. I thought the family's statements were horrendous. They were self-serving. They were aggrandizing. It was almost as if they were auditioning to be on Empire. His grandmother's statement was something beyond words. His brother's statement was beyond words in that moment. I don't think that would have any effect on a judge. And by the way, just for people who don't follow this to understand the reality, that judge had his sentence written and done prior to today. I've often talked about the theater of these sentencing. This judge wanted the cameras in courtroom. We're in prime time on the East Coast between 7 and 8. That was not a surprise decision as a result of it. But when you look at the statements from the family, don't let it not be told that the judge also was very complimentary at times to Mr. Smollett, that he's better than this, that he used his force for evil. Because remember, and these are paraphrasing the judge, he didn't do this on the spur of the moment. He didn't just see a credit card lying on a restaurant table and swipe it because he's broke. This was premeditated. So when the judge explains that the range of sentence that he was looking at jail-wise, which is what most people were thinking and wondering about today, was between 1 to 3 years, Mr. Smollett is lucky that he's escaping with only 150 days. That's the balance. And remember, the city asked for the fine of $120,000, given what the judge called a heater. And I'm sure you noticed that the heater, as the judge described it, is that the police responded to Mr. Smollett's hate crime allegation, the hoaxing, to quote the judge, with more man and woman police power than many murders the judge has sat on. And that is something that certainly factored into the decision, but boy, oh boy, was that something.
Ari, we have to leave it at there. We'll leave it with wow, as you said, and the judge pointing out that what happened here, this hoax, caused real damage to real victims of hate crimes. Thank you, Ari. We have to leave it there tonight.
Thank you, Christina.